Okay, settle in. Let me tell you about how 9 years of my life evaporated in about 90 seconds. It's funny, isn't it? How a single sentence can just detonate everything you thought was solid ground. We need hungrier talent, Art. That's what he said, Marcus Thorne, the new VP, sliding those termination papers across that ridiculously polished conference table. The company's moving in a new direction. My direction apparently was out the door. My name is Arthur Coleman. Art. At the time, I was 46 years old. I'd spent nearly a decade, 9 long years, as a senior account executive at Sterling Solutions, right here in Kansas City. Built the damn place, practically. Well, a good chunk of it. I wasn't just some guy filling a seat. I was the guy who brought in and kept the clients that accounted for almost 40% of the entire company's revenue. 40%. Think about that. Not through flashy presentations or slick talk either. It was built the old-fashioned way. Long days, endless miles on the road, late nights, early mornings, and relationships built on trust, brick by painstaking brick. And what did I do when Thorne dropped that bomb? I smiled. Actually smiled. Thanked him for the opportunity, can you believe it? Stood up, didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. Just walked out. What was the point? Marcus Thorne had swaggered in 6 months earlier, handpicked by the CEO, Robert Galloway, supposedly to reinvigorate the sales team. He wore these bespoke suits that probably cost more than my first car, spoke in cliches lifted straight from dusty motivational posters. Synergy, paradigm shift, low-hanging fruit, you know the type. And in all that time, he never once, not once, asked to join me on a client call. Never bothered to understand the actual business, the people who kept the lights on. The signs were there, of course. Hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it? 3 weeks after he started, he rolled out this dynamic new commission structure. Dynamic for him, maybe. For me, it meant a 20% cut to my earnings, even though my numbers were rock solid, same as always. Then, during those office renovations a couple of months back, my spacious office got reallocated. Suddenly, I was tucked away in a corner, practically next to the supply closet. Funny how that happens. Meeting invites started. Missing me. Little things. Easy to brush off, tell yourself it's just oversight, corporate clumsiness, until it isn't. Yesterday, I'd come back from lunch and noticed IT fiddling with my computer. Just routine maintenance, the tech mumbled, avoiding eye contact. Routine. Looking back, it was like watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. You know something's coming, you just don't want to admit it. So there I was, packing 9 years of my professional life into a single flimsy cardboard box. Family photos, Sarah and me at the lake, my daughter Emily, beaming at her graduation, my son Jack, looking impossibly grown up on his wedding day. That goofy coffee mug Emily painted for me in 3rd grade, the one with the lopsided heart. And tucked away, almost an afterthought, a plain manila folder. Inside, my personal list of client contact information, cell numbers, email addresses, notes about their families, their preferred golf courses. Stuff I'd kept separate from the official company database for years. Just habit, really. Or maybe some subconscious instinct for self-preservation I didn't even recognize at the time. Need help with that, Art? It was Chloe from accounting, peering over her cubicle wall. She had this genuinely puzzled look on her face. Are you changing offices again? Bless her heart. Something like that, Chloe, I managed, trying to keep my voice even. Didn't want to cause a scene. Didn't want the pitying looks. The elevator ride down felt like an eternity. And then, get this, the doors slid open on the executive floor, and who steps in? Robert Galloway himself, the CEO, the man who'd hired me 9 years ago. He gave me this vague nod, eyes glued to his phone, thumbs flying. Didn't even really see me, standing there with my life in a box. He had absolutely no idea that his star VP had just severed a major artery supplying the company's revenue stream. No clue what this would do to the quarterly projections he was probably reviewing on that phone. But he would. Oh yes. Soon enough. Walking across the parking lot to my car, the weirdest thing happened. I wasn't angry. Not yet, anyway. Just this strange, cold clarity. Like waking up from a really long, comfortable dream and realizing, with a jolt, that the house you were dreaming about, it was never really yours to begin with. It belonged to someone else all along. I slid behind the wheel, the leather cool against my back, and just sat there for a minute, the cardboard box riding shotgun. I drove home in complete silence. No radio, No podcasts, no frantic calls, just the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the whirring in my head, thinking about tomorrow. As I pulled into my driveway, my personal phone buzzed on the console. David Chen, my biggest client. Chen Industries. Their annual contract renewal, a massive one, was due next week. He'd texted about dinner reservations for Thursday when he'd be in town. Looking forward to it, Art. He didn't know. Nobody knew. I picked up the phone, looked at his name, and set it down on the kitchen counter without answering. Stared out the window at the oak tree in the front yard, its leaves just starting to turn gold. 9 years. Building relationships, building trust. My word, my reliability. That's what those contracts were built on. Marcus Thorne didn't just fire an employee today. He'd taken a chainsaw to the only bridge connecting Sterling Solutions to millions of dollars in revenue. And the idiot probably thought had just streamlined the payroll. I joined Sterling back when it was still called Midwestern Financial Services, before the fancy rebranding, before the gleaming downtown office tower. Robert Galloway hired me himself, poached me from a competitor where I was consistently hitting my numbers but kept getting overlooked for promotions. I want someone who knows this market inside and out. Art, he'd said back then, leaning across his old, scratched mahogany desk. Someone clients trust. And for 7 years, maybe 8, he was right to trust me. I took their client base from mostly regional businesses to major national accounts. I transformed standard 1-year contracts into secure 3-year, even 5-year deals. I landed Lockhart Manufacturing, now Chen Industries, after David took over, when they walked away from our biggest competitor, a move everyone said was impossible. I brought in the Miller Holdings Group when nobody else thought we even had a shot. My wife, Sarah, she used to joke, though maybe it wasn't always a joke, that I was married to my clients. Thursday night dinner with the Millers again? She'd ask, that resigned look in her eyes, already knowing the answer. The kids, Emily and Jack, they grew up understanding that dad's working was the default setting. Missed baseball games, skipped school plays, postponed vacations. It became their normal. I kept telling myself, that it would all be worth it someday. Build something lasting, you know? Security, legacy maybe. And we did build it. 3 promotions for me, 2 major office expansions for the company, weathering one nasty recession that took down lesser firms. Sterling Solutions grew from a modest $4 million operation to a $30 million enterprise. And my accounts, they were responsible for roughly $12 million of that annual revenue. Not that anyone bothered to calculate the exact percentage. Not until Marcus Thorne arrived with his spreadsheets and his ambition. The first real warning siren went off during a quarterly review meeting, about 3 months after Thorne took over the VP of Sales role. He projected this chart onto the screen, all slick graphics and sharp angles. Your client acquisition rate has flatlined, Art, he announced, tapping the screen with a laser pointer. The chart showed I'd only brought in 2 new accounts that quarter. That's because I'm focused on expanding our existing relationships, Marcus, I explained, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. The Chen Industries contract just doubled in value. We secured a 5-year renewal with Miller Holdings. He just waved a dismissive hand. The future is in new business, he insisted, parroting some garbage he probably read in an airport business book. We need hunters, Art, not farmers. Hunters. Like we were chasing squirrels, not nurturing multi-million-dollar partnerships built over years. A week after that meeting, my executive assistant Chloe, the one who'd been with me for 5 years, knew my clients almost as well as I did, was abruptly reassigned. Streamlining administrative resources, the memo said. The following month, my travel requests, which had always been rubber-stamped, suddenly required 3 layers of approval. My expense report started coming back flagged with nitpicky questions about $50 meals I'd had with clients 6 weeks prior. Small things, individually. Annoyances, but together, death by 1,000 cuts. Whispers started circulating about fresh talent being interviewed. Young MBAs, straight out of school, armed with aggressive sales pitches and 0 real-world industry experience. Thorne called them disruptors. Disrupting what exactly? The steady flow of revenue I was generating? Last month, he hired Jessica Pham. 29, maybe 30, fresh from some tech startup that probably burned through cash faster than a bonfire. During her very first week, Thorne assigned her to join me on a conference call with David Chen. No proper introduction, no explanation of her role, just, "Jessica's going to shadow you, Art. See how the big accounts are managed. Shadow me." Right? David noticed immediately, of course, his sharp as a tack. After the call, he texted me privately, "Who's the new girl, Art? You training your replacement? LOL. I laughed it off in my reply. Just expanding the team, David, bringing everyone up to speed. But driving home that night, I felt this cold knot forming in my gut. It was that kind of deep-down certainty you develop after years of reading people, reading rooms, sensing shifts in the corporate currents. Something was definitely not right. I should have trusted that feeling sooner. I should have done something. But what? I placed the cardboard box on the granite countertop in our kitchen. The house felt unnervingly quiet. Sarah was out in Denver for the week, helping her sister with a new baby. Probably for the best, honestly. I didn't need an audience for this particular pity party. I needed the quiet, needed to think. I went to the liquor cabinet, pulled out a bottle of decent bourbon, the good stuff I usually saved for celebrations, and poured myself 2 fingers, neat. I picked up my personal phone again, unlocked it, and just scrolled through my contacts list. 9 years of names and numbers. Over 200 clients, vendors, industry connections, people I'd played golf with, had dinner with, whose kids' graduations I remembered. People who trusted me, Arthur Coleman, to handle their business, to look out for their interests. People who had signed on the dotted line with Sterling Solutions, largely because I was the one sitting across the table, shaking their hand. Not because of Sterling's logo, or their glossy marketing brochures, or the admittedly impressive view from the downtown office. My company-issued phone, the one now sitting lifelessly in the cardboard box, contained only the official, sanitized correspondence. The real connections, the dinner invitations, the weekend calls, the personal cell numbers of CEOs and key decision-makers, those were all right here, safe and sound on my personal device. Information I hadn't stolen but accumulated organically, simply by being someone people liked, trusted, and wanted to work with. I took a slow sip of the bourbon, felt the familiar warmth spread through my chest, cutting through the chill that had settled in earlier, and a strange kind of calm washed over me. No panic about the mortgage or the health insurance. Not yet, anyway. Just this incredibly clear, almost detached understanding of what had just happened. And, more importantly, what was likely going to happen next. The bourbon burned a little going down. 9 years. 9 years of 60-plus-hour weeks. 9 years of missed anniversaries, birthdays celebrated with a quick call from a hotel room, little league games I only heard about afterward. 9 years spent pouring everything I had into building something I genuinely thought had permanence, something that reflected my effort and my commitment, only to have the rug pulled out from under me, discovering it was never really mine at all, just a temporary assignment. I opened my laptop, navigated through old files until I found it, my original employment contract from 9 years ago, blew the digital dust off it, scrolled down to the non-compete clause. It was there, standard stuff, but limited in scope, a 1-year restriction, and here was the crucial part. It only applied if I left the company voluntarily. Being terminated without cause, that changed the game entirely. Legally, there was nothing stopping me from taking my clients, the relationships I owned, elsewhere. Interesting. My phone buzzed again. David Chen. Dinner reservation confirmed for Thursday 7 p.m. at the Capitol Grill. Looking forward to discussing the renewal strategy. I stared at the message for a long time. David Chen. Chen Industries. $1.7 million in annual revenue for Sterling Solutions. He'd been my client for 6 years at Sterling and 3 years before that at my previous firm. Nearly a decade of mutual trust and respect. And he wasn't the only one. Frank Miller at Miller Holdings, George Bell at Bellwether Logistics. Together, those two accounted for another $1.5 million. All three had contract renewals coming up within the next 30 days. All three dealt exclusively, personally, through me. Thorne and his hunters wouldn't know where to begin. I set my empty bourbon glass down on the counter with a quiet click, and right then I made a decision. No angry calls tonight. No firing off furious emails or making veiled threats. That wasn't my style. I'd sleep on it, wake up with a clear head, And then, tomorrow morning, I would make exactly 3 phone calls. Not to complain, not to vent, not to try and poach them. Simply to inform my 3 longest-standing clients, as a professional courtesy, that I was no longer with Sterling Solutions, effective immediately. The rest would likely take care of itself. I reached into the cardboard box and took out the framed photos. Emily, cap and gown, grinning like the world was hers. Jack and his bride, radiating pure joy. That slightly blurry photo from our trip to Yellowstone, the one we almost canceled because of a last-minute client emergency I had to fly out and handle. I'd missed too much already. Sacrificed too much for a company that saw me as disposable. Tomorrow, I decided I'd start making different choices. Better choices. I finished the last swallow of bourbon, rinsed the glass, and went upstairs. The house felt cavernous, empty. For the first time in probably 9 years, I didn't set an alarm clock. No pre-dawn flight to catch, no quarterly projections to pour over before the sun came up. Just the quiet, unshakable certainty that Marcus Thorne, in his arrogant haste, had made a catastrophic, company-altering mistake. And the most effective thing I could do was absolutely nothing. Just step aside and let the consequences unfold naturally. The next morning, after a surprisingly decent night's sleep, I made those 3 calls. Kept it short, professional, just the facts. David, it's Art Coleman. Just wanted to let you know personally, I'm no longer with Sterling Solutions as of yesterday afternoon. Wanted you to hear it directly from me. His reaction was immediate. No hesitation. What, Art? What happened? Who the hell is handling our account now? I imagine Marcus Thorne, the VP of Sales, will be reaching out, I said calmly. Or perhaps Jessica Pham, the associate who joined our last call. A long pause on the other end. I could almost hear the gears turning. Pham? The girl from the meeting? Seriously? She doesn't know the first thing about our business, Art. That's really all I can tell you right now, David, I replied. The rest, obviously, is your decision. Similar conversations followed with Frank Miller and George Bell. Same low-key delivery. No suggestions about where they should take their business. No hint of pitching a new firm. Absolutely no bad-mouthing Sterling or Thorne. Just information, delivered with the same straightforward reliability they'd always expected from me. It was about respecting the relationship, even as it was ending in its current form. By noon, my personal cell phone was practically vibrating off the kitchen counter. News travels fast in our industry. Other clients, people I hadn't even called yet, were hearing the whispers. Texts, voicemails, emails started pouring in. Art, heard you left Sterling. What's going on? Art, give me a call when you get a chance. At precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone rang with Robert Galloway's number. The CEO, finally clued in apparently. I looked at the screen, let it ring until it went to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. Voicemail from Robert Galloway. I listened to it later. Art, this is Robert. We need to talk, urgently, about your transition. Several clients are expressing concerns, significant concerns. Please call me back immediately. I didn't call him back. Instead, I drove downtown for a prearranged meeting with Samuel Roth, an attorney specializing in employment law. Sharp guy. I'd helped his son-in-law navigate the financing maze for a new restaurant venture about 3 years ago. Just a bit of advice, connecting him with the right people. Sam owed me one. He reviewed my termination papers, my original contract. They fired you without cause, he confirmed, tapping the non-compete clause. They can't legally stop you from working in the industry, Art, and they certainly can't stop your clients from choosing who they want to work with. But, he cautioned, leaning back in his leather chair, expect them to try and scare your clients. Non-disclosure reminders, veiled threats about confidential information. Prepare for that. He was right. By 4 p.m., an email landed in my personal inbox from Sterling's legal department. A stiff, formal reminder about my ongoing confidentiality obligations regarding proprietary company information. Standard intimidation tactic. By 5 p.m., a text message from Marcus Thorne himself. Art, let's connect to discuss your exit package. Perhaps there's room for some consulting work during the transition. Consulting work? Seriously. Too late, Marcus. Way too late. My phone buzzed again around 5:30. David Chen. Art, he said, his voice tight. Just got off a call with your former CEO, Galloway, and that Thorne fellow who fired you. They were scrambling. Promised seamless continuity. Said Jessica Pham would personally oversee everything. Then they offered me a 10% discount on the renewal if I signed by the end of the week. What did you tell them, David? I asked quietly. Told them I'd think about it, he replied. I waited. He continued. Art, about an hour ago, I had our legal team send formal notice terminating our contract with Sterling Solutions, effective immediately. Cited material change in relationship management as the cause. Frank Miller and George Bell did the same this afternoon. Sent copies to Galloway and Thorne. Still, I said nothing. Let the silence hang for a beat. Then David asked the question I knew was coming. So Art, where are you landing? Because wherever it is, that's where Chen Industries' business is going. Wow. Just wow. That night, 3 more companies from my Sterling portfolio sent termination notices. By the next morning, the count was up to 8. 8 major accounts, representing over $3.2 million in annual contracts, gone from Sterling in less than 48 hours. Robert Galloway called an emergency board meeting. I knew because Chloe, my former assistant, sent me a discreet text from her personal phone. Complete chaos here, Art. Thorne is trying to blame you for client tampering. Galloway is demanding to know why nobody saw this coming. Heads might roll. My phone rang again, a number I didn't recognize. Arthur Coleman, I answered. Mr. Coleman, good morning. Howard Stern here from Summit Advisory Group. Summit Advisory, a competitor. Smaller than Sterling maybe, but with a much better reputation for client focus and employee retention. Known for being smart, stable, and ethical. I hear you might be available, Stern continued, his voice calm and professional. And several of our mutual friends in the industry speak very highly of you. I'm listening, Mr. Stern, I said. We'd like to offer you a position as Senior Vice President, he said directly. Substantial 6-figure signing bonus, full autonomy to manage your client relationships as you see fit, a competitive compensation package with significant performance incentives, and importantly, a seat on our executive committee. We value experience like yours, Art. When would you want me to start? I asked, already knowing my answer. How's tomorrow sound? I accepted on the spot. Not out of desperation, not because I needed a job, but because it was exactly the kind of opportunity I should have been looking for years ago. Respect, autonomy, recognition of the actual value I brought to the table. Partnership, not just employment. That afternoon, Marcus Thorne texted me again. Desperation reeked from the message. Art, board just approved a significant retention package. Full salary continuation for 6 months, plus stock options. Just help us transition your accounts smoothly. Let's talk. I didn't even bother to respond. There was absolutely nothing left to say. They'd had 9 years to value what I built. 9 years to show me respect. Now they were trying to slap a price tag on it after they'd already thrown it away. Too little. Much, much too late. About a week into my new role at Summit Advisory, settling into a corner office significantly larger and nicer than my old one at Sterling, Chloe called me again, this time from her personal cell after work hours. Art, you need to know what really happened, she said, her voice low and urgent. It wasn't just Thorne wanting to bring in his own people. It was bigger than that. I leaned back in my chair, the Kansas City skyline spread out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, and listened as the past 9 years suddenly rearranged themselves into a much clearer and far uglier picture. They were planning to sell the firm, Art, Chloe explained. Apex Holdings made a serious offer about 2 months ago, but it came with conditions. Big ones. Apex Holdings, a major private equity group known for aggressive acquisitions and ruthless integration. Apex wanted to bring in their own account managers for the major clients, especially the national ones you handled, she continued. They wanted to merge them quickly into their existing portfolio companies, cut overhead, you know the drill. The pieces slammed into place with sickening force. Thorne hadn't been hired to grow sales, had been brought in specifically to transition key accounts away from me, to sever the personal relationships, make those multi-million-dollar contracts look like generic company assets on a spreadsheet, ready to be packaged and sold. My termination wasn't about my performance or needing hungrier talent. It was strategic. It was preparation for an acquisition. I was an obstacle to be removed. How do you know all this, Chloe? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I'm still assigned to the executive suite admin pool, she said. I see the documents, Art. I hear the conversations in the hallways when they think no one's listening. Yesterday afternoon, Apex formally pulled their offer, sent a letter, said the deal was contingent on the stability of the client base, specifically the major accounts. Without those relationships intact, the valuation didn't hold up. They walked away. After we hung up, I just sat there, motionless, for a long time. The silence in the office felt heavy. 9 years of unwavering loyalty. 9 years of putting Sterling Solutions first. And they'd been planning to detach me from my clients, the very relationships I'd poured my life into, like removing some inconvenient middleman. Not because I had failed them, but because, in a way, I had succeeded too well. The relationships were too strong, too personal, too tied to me. They needed me gone before those clients could be repackaged and sold off like office furniture. I opened my laptop, checked my new Summit email address. More messages from former Sterling clients expressing interest in moving their business. The industry grapevine was buzzing. Arthur Coleman had landed at Summit Advisory, and his clients were following him in droves. Sterling's projected quarterly earnings were suddenly looking disastrous. I saw a flash on a financial news site. Sterling Solutions' parent company stock had dropped 12% in just 5 days. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert Galloway. "Art, can we please meet? Soon, just you and me. No lawyers, no pretense." I didn't respond right away. That deeper betrayal, the calculated sacrifice on the altar of a corporate deal, settled in my stomach like cold, heavy lead. It wasn't just incompetence, it was deliberate manipulation. I picked up my phone, but instead of texting Galloway back, I called David Chen. "David, I need to ask you something," I said, keeping my voice steady. "In the last few months, did anyone from Sterling try to introduce you to someone, maybe presented as a consultant or strategic advisor, perhaps someone from a company called Apex Holdings?" There was a pause on the line. Then, Apex? Yeah, how did you know? Galloway brought in some guy named Thomas during our last quarterly review meeting, said he was a strategic partner looking at broad industry trends, wanted to understand our future needs, asked a lot of detailed questions about our 5-year growth plans. Confirmation. Cold hard confirmation. They'd been parading Apex representatives in front of my clients, under false pretenses, laying the groundwork for a handover, all while I was still employed, still busting my hump, still naively trusting that I was building something that mattered, something valued. More calls to other key clients revealed the same disturbing pattern. Behind my back, clandestine meetings had been scheduled, sensitive information gathered, my hard-won relationships probed for weaknesses, assessed for how easily they could be transferred once I was out of the picture. By the end of the day, I'd confirmed that at least 6 of my major accounts had been covertly introduced to Apex representatives disguised as consultants or advisors. Finally, I texted Robert Galloway back. Just 7 words. "No meeting necessary, Robert. I understand the Apex situation completely." His response was almost instantaneous. It was purely a business decision, Art. Nothing personal. Nothing personal, right? 9 years of my life, my family's sacrifices, knowing clients' kids' names, attending their parents' funerals, answering panicked calls on Christmas Eve, all of that reduced to an impediment on a spreadsheet, an obstacle to a transaction. Nothing personal. I closed my laptop and looked out at the Kansas City skyline again from my new vantage point at Summit. The view felt different now, sharper, clearer somehow. Summit Advisory had already signed contracts with 11 of my former Sterling clients, representing nearly $5 million in annual revenue, and more were in the pipeline. Not because I was actively recruiting them, calling them up with offers, but because in this business, trust follows people. It doesn't stick to logos or corporate mission statements, especially when those statements prove hollow. Sterling Solutions hadn't just lost a senior account executive. They'd kicked out the very foundation their recent growth was built upon. And the truly staggering thing? I suspected they still didn't fully understand why it had all crumbled so quickly. About 3 weeks after joining Summit, I received an email invitation. The Midwest Financial Services Conference, a major industry event, wanted me to speak on a panel. The topic? Building client loyalty in a transactional market. Oh, the irony. It was almost poetic. I accepted immediately, not for my ego, not for the exposure, but because I knew exactly who would be sitting in that audience. Industry peers, Potential new clients for Summit? Yes. But more importantly, Robert Galloway and what remained of Sterling Solutions' senior leadership team. Galloway never missed this conference. Neither did the influential members of his board. Meanwhile, Summit was backing me up with resources Sterling had never offered. 2 sharp, dedicated analysts assigned just to my accounts, proactive marketing support tailored to my clients' industries, and crucially, the offer Howard Stern had made wasn't just a job, it included a clear path to equity partnership. Every piece of business I brought in, every relationship I nurtured, wasn't just generating commission anymore. It was building something tangible that I would partially own. I spent the next month preparing for that conference panel, not crafting flashy PowerPoint slides filled with buzzwords like Thorne would have, not rehearsing clever anecdotes. Instead, I worked late nights with my 2 analysts, digging into the data. We compiled detailed performance metrics for every single client who had followed me from Sterling to Summit. We looked at service response times, project implementation costs, churn rates, and most importantly, client satisfaction scores measured through independent surveys. The results were stark, undeniable. Average service response time for these clients? Reduced by 53% since moving to Summit. Implementation costs for new projects? Down by an average of 30%. Client satisfaction scores? Up by a staggering 22 points across the board. It wasn't just about me being a good guy. It was quantifiable proof of what happens when a company genuinely prioritizes relationship management and empowers its people, versus treating clients and account managers like interchangeable cogs in a machine. The morning of the conference, I reviewed my notes one last time. No plans for dramatic reveals, no intention of naming Sterling Solutions explicitly. Just the facts, the data, the outcomes, delivered professionally, calmly, measuredly, and I suspected devastatingly effective. As I walked into the hotel ballroom, scanning the crowd, I spotted him immediately. Robert Galloway, huddled near the coffee station with 2 grim-faced board members I recognized. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly when our eyes met across the room. I gave him a brief, polite nod and kept walking toward the stage. The panel discussion started predictably enough. Questions about market trends, technological disruption, the usual fare. When the moderator turned to me, asking about fostering loyalty, I spoke plainly. In an age where almost everything is becoming automated, digitized, and transactional, I began looking out at the audience. Personal accountability, genuine human connection, that's become the rarest and most valuable commodity. Companies often make the mistake, I continued, choosing my words carefully, of viewing established client relationships as corporate assets, things they own outright. They aren't. They are trust agreements. Agreements forged between individuals, agreements that require constant reinforcement, consistent delivery, and unwavering integrity. Then I presented the data, not as an attack, but as case studies. Consider a portfolio of clients in the manufacturing and logistics sectors, I said, gesturing towards the screen displaying anonymized charts. These clients recently transitioned to a firm with a different service model, one emphasizing dedicated support and proactive engagement. Within 6 months, we observed, and I laid out the numbers, the reduced response times, the lower costs, the soaring satisfaction scores. The lesson here isn't about crafting clever retention packages or relying solely on contractual obligations, I concluded, my gaze sweeping across the room. It's about a fundamental understanding. When you treat your key relationship managers as expendable or interchangeable parts, your clients will eventually show you exactly how flawed that assumption is. They vote with their feet. During the Q&A session, a young analyst I didn't recognize stood up. He asked the question that was likely on everyone's mind, the elephant in the room. Mr. Coleman, isn't your own recent move from Sterling Solutions, he actually named them, to Summit Advisory, along with a significant number of major clients, exactly the kind of scenario that makes companies hesitant to give too much autonomy or control to their senior relationship managers? Isn't that the risk they're trying to mitigate? The room went utterly silent. I could feel Galloway's stare burning into the side of my face from across the ballroom. That's a fair question, I replied, meeting the analyst's gaze directly. But I'd ask you to consider the alternative perspective. Sterling Solutions, I use the name now since he had, lost those clients not because I actively took them. They lost those clients because somewhere along the line, they fundamentally failed to understand or perhaps ceased to value what those clients actually needed and expected from the relationship. No one followed me out of blind personal loyalty alone, I stated firmly. They followed because their business needs were consistently better met, demonstrably so, through the approach to service and partnership that I championed, an approach my former employer explicitly decided was no longer aligned with their new direction. I paused for a beat, letting the words sink in, and made brief, deliberate eye contact with Robert Galloway. Every company has the right to change its strategy, its direction. And every client, I finished, my voice steady, has the absolute right to decide if that new direction still serves their best interests. The market, in that sense, is brutally fair and remarkably efficient. After the panel concluded, as people were mingling, 3 more former Sterling clients approached me, expressing interest in discussing a move to Summit. By the end of the conference, Summit Advisory had signed letters of intent with 5 new accounts, representing another $2.7 million in annual revenue, snatched right from under Sterling's nose. That evening, back in my hotel room, I checked the financial news feeds on my laptop. A small headline caught my eye. Sterling Solutions announces leadership restructuring. Reading further, it stated that Marcus Thorne was pursuing other opportunities, effective immediately. The article also mentioned, almost as a footnote, that the rumored acquisition talks with Apex Holdings were officially dead. Sterling stock had fallen another 8% that day. I closed my laptop. Didn't feel a surge of satisfaction, no sense of triumph or vindication. Just that same quiet, calm certainty. The certainty that comes from being proven right, not by arguments or accusations, but by the undeniable, impartial judgment of the market itself. The lesson had been delivered, loud and clear. Whether Sterling, or what was left of it, would actually learn from it, that was no longer my problem. 6 months after Marcus Thorne slid those papers across the table, I stood in Summit Advisory Group's largest conference room. My team, the analysts, the support staff, the junior associates I was mentoring, surrounded me, along with Howard Stern and the rest of the firm's leadership. On the big screen behind me, a single slide displayed our team's quarterly results. $8.4 million in new annualized business booked. 70% of it originating from former Sterling Solutions clients who had chosen to follow trust, not inertia. Howard Stern himself raised a glass of champagne. To Art Coleman, he announced, a broad smile on his face, and to the single best acquisition Summit Advisory has ever made. And the beauty of it is, we didn't even have to buy a company to get him. Polite, appreciative laughter rippled through the room. I managed a small smile, raised my own glass, but didn't join the laughter. For me, this wasn't really about celebration. It was about validation. Quiet, internal validation. Just then, my phone buzzed silently in my pocket. A news alert from a local business journal. Sterling Corp announces CEO transition. Robert Galloway steps down amid continued revenue challenges and strategic missteps. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without a word, without showing anyone. Some victories don't require an audience. They resonate deeper when kept private. Later that afternoon, as I was packing up my briefcase, my assistant handed me a thick vellum envelope that had been delivered by courier. No return address, just my name handwritten on the front. Inside, on heavy personal stationery, was a short note also handwritten. From Robert Galloway. Art, it read. You were right. I put the transaction ahead of the relationship. It cost the company and me personally almost everything. If you are ever willing to have a coffee, just talk, I would appreciate the chance to apologize properly, in person. I folded the note carefully and placed it in the inside pocket of my jacket. Maybe someday, but not yet. Some wounds need more time. That evening, driving home, my route took me past the familiar glass tower of the Sterling Solutions building. Something was different. High above the entrance, workers on a scaffold were carefully removing the large, illuminated Sterling Solutions sign from the facade. The Business Journal had reported they were downsizing significantly, moving to a smaller, much less prestigious office space out in the suburbs. I didn't slow down, didn't pause to look, didn't take a picture. I just kept driving, eyes fixed on the road ahead, toward the life I was now building. On my own terms, 1 year. Exactly 1 year to the day after Marcus Thorne had informed me of Sterling's new direction, I sat in Howard Stern's office and signed the final documents, making me a full equity partner at Summit Advisory Group. The firm had grown an incredible 34% since my arrival, largely fueled by the clients who had placed their trust in me, and by extension, in Summit. My personal client portfolio now represented nearly $20 million in stable, recurring annual revenue. I closed the heavy manila folder containing the partnership agreement and looked out my office window at that familiar Kansas City skyline. The same buildings, the same Missouri River carving its path through the city, but everything else felt different, transformed. The door opened softly, and Sarah came in carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. She set one down in front of me. "Signed, sealed, and official?" she asked, her eyes warm. I nodded, picking up the mug. "Signed and official." She sat down in the chair across from my desk, studying my face intently. "You don't look quite as ecstatic as I expected, Mr. Partner." I took a sip of coffee. "Just thinking," I said. "Not really about Sterling anymore." I shook my head. "About what we're building here, about doing it the right way this time, for everyone." That very morning, my first official act as a partner had been to approve the hiring of 3 new associate account managers, and I'd made sure they were coming in under the same kind of profit-sharing and performance incentive structure I had negotiated for myself. No one at Summit would pour their heart and soul into building something, only to have the rug pulled out from under them because of some backroom deal or executive whim. That was my commitment. My phone buzzed. A text from David Chen. "Art, heard the news about the partnership? Fantastic! Huge congratulations. Knew you'd not just land on your feet, but soar." I smiled and texted back, "Thanks, David. Couldn't have done it without loyal clients like you." His reply came back instantly. "No, Art, thanks to you being who you are, consistent, reliable, trustworthy. We just followed the value, simple as that." After we hung up, I picked up the small framed quote Sarah had given me last Christmas. It sat on my credenza, simple black letters on parchment paper. "The best revenge is massive success." I looked at it for a moment, then gently placed it back on the credenza face down. That chapter, the one fueled by hurt and a desire to prove them wrong, was well and truly closed. I pulled out my calendar and found Robert Galloway's contact information. I sent him a brief email suggesting we meet for that coffee next week. Not to gloat, not to rehash the past or demand further apologies, but because sometimes the very last step in truly moving forward, in shedding that weight, is extending a quiet hand, closing the circle, and releasing the ghosts of what happened before. I shut down my computer, picked up my keys and briefcase, and walked out of my office to meet Sarah in the lobby. We had tickets to see our son Jack's band perform at a local club tonight. It was the kind of thing I almost certainly would have missed in my previous life, citing a client dinner or an urgent proposal. But not anymore. Some losses, I realized, just clear the way for much better victories. Some fires, devastating as they feel at the time, only burn away the things that needed to go, the things that were holding you back without you even realizing it. Driving away from the downtown lights, heading towards the music and my family, I'd never been more certain of that simple truth in my entire life. I hope Art's story resonated with you. It's a powerful reminder that true value often lies in the things you can't easily measure on a spreadsheet: trust, integrity, and the strength of human connection. Sometimes, the biggest setbacks clear the path for our greatest growth. What did you take away from Art's experience? Have you ever faced a situation where your loyalty or hard work felt completely disregarded? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Reading your stories helps us all heal and learn. If stories like this move you, please consider subscribing to TK Revenge Story for more real-life accounts of resilience and quiet justice. And if Art's journey touched you personally, you can support the channel through the super thanks button below. Your generosity helps us continue sharing these important narratives, and as we know, giving can be a powerful part of the healing process too. Thank you for listening.